Hello, welcome. This is a video today about supporting English learners through a special technique, walkthroughs. And this is part of a Micro-Credential series for school leaders who are serving English learners. And that series is based on a handbook called the Illinois English Learner Handbook. And this is a handbook I created. I'm Rebecca Vonderlack-Navarro with my colleague, Garibay-Mulattieri. And we're part of an organization called the Latino Policy Forum. And we wanted a resource for school leaders anywhere who are serving English learners. And so today we are going to be talking about walkthroughs, and I'm here with a retired principal with years of experience in Chicago, Illinois, serving English learners. So welcome, Ted Johnson. So glad you're here today to talk to us about walkthroughs.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you for having me here to talk with you about something very near and dear to my heart.
And I was hoping you could start today by telling me a bit about the English learners that you served throughout your career and some of the demographics you worked with.
The school where I was administrator, first assistant principal and then later principal, was located on the north side of Chicago in the Albany Park neighborhood. It was a very large elementary school. We had over 1,200 students, grades pre-K through 8th grade. 96% of the students were classified as being low income, according to the federal government formula. 65% of the students were English learners. We were a multicultural, diverse school, so we had probably over 25 different language groups represented and well over 35 different ethnic groups represented. Because we were so diverse and had so many different numbers of language groups, we used every different bilingual education model that was available to us. So for my largest language population, which was Spanish, we had a dual language, Spanish-English dual language program. Then we had transitional bilingual program for our Gujarati-speaking students and our Arabic-speaking students, both pull-out bilingual program as well as self-contained bilingual. And then for all the other language groups that we had, we offered ESL support services. It was an expectation in my school because bilingualism impacted every aspect of the school. It was an expectation that every teacher in the school either had bilingual or ESL endorsement, because it was expected whenever that student was with them that they were going to be able to apply the methodology necessary to meet their needs. It was not acceptable for a teacher in my school to say, this student is your student, this student is my student. They belonged to everybody. We were all responsible for their success.
Yeah, and in the handbook we talk about teachers as being critical for student achievement, and a highly qualified bilingual teacher is just so imperative. So for all the principals and school leaders out there that have English learners right now under their care, how would you tell them they could use a walkthrough for supporting English learner education? Why is that useful?
Well, for me, the bilingual education is not just an academic issue, it's an equity issue also. So I use the walkthrough to assure that the English learners were receiving the same rigorous education that the non-English learners were receiving. And so I would go into the classroom, and that would be the thing that I was always looking for. Does the English learner, the bilingual student, have the access to the same curriculum at the same rigor as the other students do? And so I would, an example of that would be, an issue that's common for probably all urban schools is literacy development. We are working on literacy development, and it becomes especially challenging when you're dealing with multiple languages. Yeah. So in our professional development with my teachers, we talked about literacy development, and we all agreed that in order to develop literacy, we needed to have a school that was a literacy-rich environment. And one way that we could assure that we had a literacy-rich environment was by making sure that literacy or literature was available to all of the students. One way we could do that was to assure that every classroom had a classroom library. And we also agreed that if a classroom library was going to be relevant to the students and effective, that it shouldn't just contain American literature, English literature, but it should contain culturally appropriate literature and literature written in the languages of the students that are going to be reading it. They should, in order to develop English language, they also have to develop their own native language. So we wanted to make sure that that was available to them. So once we agreed on all of that, we had professional development on developing classroom libraries, which the teachers did. And I said, after that, now know that as I do my walkthroughs, that's going to be something that I'm going to be looking for, is do you have classroom libraries? Are they culturally appropriate? You have literature in the languages of your student? So one day, I told my APs, I said, let's do a quick run through and just go into the classrooms. This is going to be our guiding question. Is there a classroom library, a well-organized classroom library in that classroom? And two, are the books there culturally appropriate, and are there books available in the languages of all the students in that classroom? So we quickly did that, gathered the information, brought it back, and then the most important part is using that information to inform practice. So we saw which teachers might need a little bit more assistance in developing classroom libraries. So I paired them up with teachers that had exemplary classroom libraries and said, work on it together, how to do it. And then the other thing is we took that information to inform our school improvement plan. And so having classroom libraries was included in the plan. And then, of course, budget money has to support whatever is in that plan. So we made sure that we budgeted money for teachers to be able to have a stipend in order to buy books for their classroom libraries. So we supported their practice with the budget. So that's a way that the walkthrough can be carried all the way through to planning and budgeting.
And outcomes. You said something interesting at the beginning, that you would tell the teachers what you were looking for and the purpose of the walkthrough.
Of course.
It sounds like it wasn't a gotcha moment.
No, of course
why,
not. No.
Why is that important?
Trust. It's all an issue of trust. I mean, if I walk into a room and I'm not telling them I'm there and I'm not telling them what I'm looking for, the teacher is going to be on pins and needles the whole time I'm there, wondering why I'm there, and then when I leave, wondering why was I there and whatever. But if I say ahead of time that this is what I'm looking for when I go in your room, and then I come out and as I said, after it, I inform them, this is what I saw or whatever, then it changes the whole dynamic. And to the point where walkthroughs have become a very positive thing in the culture of my school, where the teachers look for it and welcome that kind of visit and that kind of feedback.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And can you tell me, just kind of walk us through, what do you do for a walkthrough? What are resources that informed your process? How do you start it?
It's so easy. I mean, because it's exactly what the name says. You walk through. I mean, it's just a walkthrough. And I always like to compare it to the observation, is what we're used to doing. A walkthrough versus a classroom observation. A walkthrough is something that's very short. It's very brief. You shouldn't be in a classroom more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes max, but average is around 5 minutes. Whereas in an observation, you're sitting in there, and for an hour you should be there in order to have an effective classroom observation of a teacher. In the same sense, where an observation is evaluative, you're in there looking at the teacher for the purpose of evaluating them, that is not the purpose of the walkthrough in any way. And the teachers have to understand that, and they'll get that idea. At the beginning, they're going to be suspicious. They're going to think, oh no, you're going to somehow zap me with what you're seeing. And they have to see that that's not the purpose. It's not to evaluate them. And so that's why the sharing out after is important. And in that sharing out, I would never call out a teacher for something negative that I saw. The only time I would name a teacher after a walkthrough is by saying, naming a best practice that I saw in such and such a room, naming a really neat activity that I saw taking place in such and such a room that was going on. Then if teachers see that sort of feedback, and they're going to be motivated by it. And you can be sure that those same things that I'm complimenting them on, they're going to be doing it again. And you know what? Other teachers are going to be doing it too, because they're going to say, you like that, I'm going to do that too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Can you give us an example of when there was a walkthrough that you found something really positive, specific to English learners, and it created this positive environment and other teachers wanted to do that same practice? Or?
Well, I've already mentioned the classroom library, and I think that is a very good example because, like I mentioned, with one of the walkthroughs that we did regarding classroom libraries, we did it on a professional development day. This is a walkthrough that you can do when students aren't in the building. In fact, it's better that they weren't in the building to do this walkthrough. But I already knew which classrooms had really, really good classroom libraries where the teachers had couches in it or floor pillows and carpeting where the kids can go lay down and grab their book and read and whatever. So I knew, I picked like 4 or 5 different teachers in different grade clusters. And then on a professional development, I divided the teachers into groups. They did the walkthrough then, and they went and visited these classrooms where the teacher was there hosting them, and then the teacher presented to them, how to set it up and showed them everything with it, what made it good. And so they became mentors to their colleagues, and it became a professional development activity. It moved. So that was a very positive thing. So then that type of classroom library became the norm in my school, where you would see vast majority of teachers had really welcoming classroom library.
And it didn't become the norm because you said everyone do this. It became the norm because
Absolutely
everybody was
not.
learning from each
Absolutely.
other.
I never said this is what you have to do.
Exactly. Instead, it was a way to create buy-in in a really positive way. Tell us, for those out there that maybe are new serving an English learner population, what's an aha moment you've had while conducting walkthroughs?
The one that I always like to talk about was a walkthrough that I did with my assistant principals related to center of control of learning. I mean, we had just done a professional development activity with the teachers on how it's good for teachers to transfer the control for learning over to the students. And I would always tell the teachers, I want to go in a classroom and I want to see the teacher or the students talking and the students working and the teacher facilitating. But of course, you don't see that yet. So, and we did the professional development, and I told my assistant principals, I said, just to make a point, let's just divide up and go into every room right now in this next half hour. And the question it will be, when you walk in the room, look and say, where is the focus of learning? Where is the center of learning? Who's controlling it? Teacher or student? And so we did that. And within a half hour, we all came back and combined our results, and it was amazing, the perfect incline that we saw. I mean, where at this end was almost no teacher control of the learning, going all the way up to this end where there was total teacher control of learning. And this end were primary grades going up to the middle school grades, the upper grades. So it was like a perfect angle going up. The older the students got, the more control of learning was taken away from them, and the teachers took control of it. And so what made it especially powerful, that was the first aha. But the next aha was presenting that data to the teachers. And I did that within the same day, because of course they saw us just walk in, walk out, mark something down, and they wanted to know what it was. So immediately I made bar graphs, this and that, and sent it out to them. And you heard ahas all the way up and down the halls as everybody was seeing that. And so then that was the conversation we had at our next professional development. What do you think this is all about? And, and then how can we change that? If we all agree, because everybody, if I had just asked the teachers, how many of you have the majority of the time are students in control of learning, everybody would say that was the case.
Yeah.
But when you take one snapshot, then you see the truth.
And it comes out.
And so then it would put to them, and then I saw instruction changing in the middle school especially, where teachers actively looked for ways that they could, move the control of learning to the students from their own control.
So this is really rich information, so much for school leaders to learn in supporting English learners, especially through this technique. Is there any tips or resources that we haven't covered you think folks would benefit from?
Well, I guess one main tip that I would say is with the walkthrough is if it's done correctly, a walkthrough is a very positive experience. A teacher should not feel tensed up if you walk into their room. Students should not stop everything when you walk into the room. Your presence there should be as natural as the lesson going on and as a positive experience. So if I'm the instructional leader, I want my teachers to look at me for that sort of feedback as mentoring. And so that's what the walkthrough provides, is that opportunity for me to relate with the teachers as an instructional mentor. And then the other thing I guess I would add is, you're asking for resources. Probably the main resource that I used in developing my walkthrough technique is a very quick read short book that you can get from the ASCD website, Administration, Supervision, and Curriculum Development, and it's a real short book called The 3-Minute Walkthrough. And that's has very, very clear tips on how to do an effective walkthrough and make it a very effective professional development activity for your faculty.
Wonderful. Well, thanks so much for being here today, and we hope that there are many school leaders out there that benefit from all your rich information.
I hope so too. Thank you very much for the opportunity.